Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Textile Talk. I'm Lucy Shakin, SACWA's Communications Coordinator and your Textile Talks organizer. Textile Talks are presented by the International Quilt Museum, San Jose Museum of Quilts and Textiles, Studio Art Quilt Associates, or SACWA, and Surface Design Association. We love bringing you these free programs every week, thanks to the support of our sponsors and contributions from viewers like you. Thank you. If you enjoy Textile Talks, please consider making a donation at sacwa.com/TT support. If you'd like to be on Textile Talks, SACWA is currently accepting proposals for our 2023 calendar. You'll need to submit by August 31st. If you're a fiber artist with a story to tell, we really want to hear from you. All of that info is at sacwa.com/calls, and I will put both those links in the chat shortly. Few Zoom notes before we begin. This is a webinar and we cannot see or hear you, but we can read your comments in the chat. If you have any questions during today's program, please type them into the Q&A function. Paula will be typing out answers to some of your questions as we go. If you have suggestions for ways we can improve or for topics you'd like to see in future Textile Talks, please let us know in the post-event survey. Today's program is Al Margen de las Artes, or On the Margins of the Arts, with Paola Carmago González. Paola is an independent curator who has been working for the past 5 years in the area of symbolic reparation with victims of the armed conflict in Colombia. She worked as a researcher in the art curatorship of the National Museum of Colombia and was an advisor for the contents of the Museum of Memory of Colombia. She has been a university professor and professional proofreader. Paola holds a Ph.D. in art history from the State University of Campinas in Brazil, a master's degree in aesthetics and art history, and is a historian. She's pleased to participate in Textile Talks, and we are so grateful to her for presenting the work that you'll see today. Paola starts with an overview of some of the most internationally known Colombian fiber artists, and then shows us the work of Flor Tapia, Blanca Nubia Díaz, and Gladys Acevedo. Through the work of these three artists, Paola will focus on the relationship between embroidery, memory making, and demanding justice within the context of forced disappearances in Colombia. So let's go ahead and watch Paola's presentation now.
I want to start by thanking Marta Silman, Lucy Shaken, and Camilo Sanchez for inviting me to this space. What's currently happening with fiber and textile arts and artists in Colombia? This is the question which I was invited to talk about in this space. Therefore, this talk is divided into sections. In the first one, I will give you an overview of some Colombian artists. Lucy, please, the next slide. Artists who have worked with fiber arts, and I believe they deserve to be known. Some of them have been able to exhibit their work in the international circuit, and others are in the path. The second part will be about 3 women that, without belonging to the art context, they have achieved a technical expertise around the fibers work. I believe that if the artists are barely known, these 3 women have a more difficult path to go through. That is why I want to give them my voice so their work could be known by you. This is the group of artists I select for you. Now I'm going to show some of the artworks they have developed. Please, we can go to the next slide. Olga Amaral. Her work is a reference for the textile art as well as in an icon for the Latin American abstract movement. The usage of gold and the symbolic significance is decisive in her work, thus is also an assertion of the traditional knowledge and techniques. Next slide, please. One of the most representative features is the cotton combined with other materials, as we can see in this image. Next, please. Can go, yeah. Thank you. Maria Angelica Medina, Meat is a means of language, is a trade and mind discipline. Through this, she intends to change the art monologue for dialogue, the communication, the ideas exchange, perceptions, and memories. She said, my work without public is nothing. She's working in this artwork for 37 years, and that's why I select this artwork of Maria Angelica, because it's amazing. Thank you. The next, please. Another artwork for framed dresses, and it's a very interesting piece also that I invite you to research and to know. Tawan's work has had a great influence of the cultural, aesthetic, symbolic, and graphic richness of our ancestral tradition, coming from the pre-Hispanic indigenous ethnic groups, especially from goldsmithing and its production techniques. Can go to the next, please. Thank you. Her work is intuitive, but also gets nurtured by the constant research. That is the way she arrives to three-dimensional object and the wall tapestry. She incorporates traditional techniques into contemporary new techniques. And now we can go to Álvaro Diego Gómez Campuzano. Gómez Campuzano's work is harmonic connection between the ancestral and the contemporary. He said, I begin with the research of numerologies, architecture, ceremonial spaces, and pre-Columbian geometry. We can see another artwork of Álvaro Diego here. He uses an extensive variety of materials given by his persistent exploration, from natural fibers, exploring also the synthetic materials like industrial belt conveyors and also organic materials. And we can go to Luz Ángela Lizarazo. Thank you. Lizarazo's work could be understood as a wave. Her work is defined by a network creation, which connects one idea with another, where complex contexts like social, cultural, and political are linked to poetical spaces that are determinant in her practice. The tension between fragility and the hardness of reality is always present in her work. And we can see this other beautiful job of Luz Ángela named Red de Niebla. And we can see this other named Market Bag. She has used diverse artist language as drawing, watercolor, painting, sculpture, embroidery, and material like glass, bones, hair, wool, which allude to the symbolic. And let's go to Jorge Iván Restrepo. Restrepo is related to textile art through fibers frames, which are part of a collective and participatory work. His work is closely related to performance and action that includes the other. And finally, I want to introduce Valeria Montoya Giraldo, the youngest artist in this group that I create for you. And she is interested in the body expression, exploring different routes so she can have access to it, like places, objects, and constantly exploring the body's gestures, behaviors, and reactions. So I finish here the first part of this talk, and I want to go to the second part on the margins of art. I want to talk about Flor Tapia, Blanca Nubia Díaz, and Gladys Acevedo, and let's begin with Flor Tapia. I want to show you an artwork of Flor Tapia, and We can go to the next slide, please. And while we see this artwork for a minute, I want to read some words that have been written by Flor Tapia. With my grandmother, I roamed the mountains and rivers looking for plants and fruits. She told me stories of blessed souls, demons, coveted treasures, and magical beings of nature. Those stories, on the edge, on the real and the dreamlike, good and evil, are the origin of my creative process. The death of my mother and the violence of that time forced my family to emigrate to Bogota, where the harshness of life was shown with hardship and lack. I learned to embroider with the nuns to survive. Embroider flowers and birds from their orders somehow. It allowed me to go back to my mountains and rebuild those worlds created by my grandmother. From those reconstructions and daydreams come much of my characters, animals, and scenes. We can go to the next slide, please. Initially attracted and inspired by Asian looms from the 16th century tapestries, illustration of ancient books and encyclopedias, I began to build my stories and create my composition that were gradually growing in size to shape what is my work nowadays. The next, please. In my work, I like to experiment with elements and nature shapes, which allows me to play with colors, in addition to creating characters that represent a scene or tell a story. I like the precise work and putting infinitive details. With my paintings, I invite the viewer to go through every corner and immerse themselves in the story I want to tell. The next, please. Thank you. For me, Flor Tapia's work is important for several aspects. The first one, the time she dedicates to each work, which is on average is 3 to 5 years. The second one, the way she arrived at that embroidery as a way of materializing her vision. For Flor Tapia, embroidery is the way to prove to people that her vision and her imagination result. That means her embroidery is a proof of truth. And finally, her need to embroider in order to give a message to younger people about caring for the living. This is an argument that we will find in the next two embroiderers. This work allows us to appreciate her enormous technical virtuosity, evident in the sensation of movement of the water, of the wine, in sailor expressions. And I want to close with this last one, a vision of Colombia's former president, Juan Manuel Santos, has a talk about peace in Colombia with the president of the United States of that moment, Barack Obama. You can see the two presidents talking, and in other scene, the journalist taking notes and recording. And in the first part of the image, we have the guerrillas talking to. And it's real, very interesting artwork of Flor Tapia, because she has a lot of artwork with the political issue. Blanca Nubia Díaz is a Guayú indigenous woman. Within her community, the ancestral knowledge about weaving is essential when it comes to raising men and women. Weaving is a part of restoring the balance of the world. Next, please. More than 30 years ago, Blanca Nubia's daughter was a victim of forced disappearance. Years after searching and searching, Blanca found her body. However, she continues to be part of several collectives which struggle to learn the truth about their disappeared relatives. In her case, which is the same as other memory seamstresses, costureras de la memoria in Colombia, embroidery allows them to claim, express their truth, demand justice, and make pedagogy on the importance of non-repetition. Memory, in this beautiful orange color, is one of the words that we can see one and another time in all the work of Blanca Nubia, like in the next slide. Yeah, thank you. We can show some details from the other 2 or 3 slides. And this artwork has words like peace, liberty, resistance, fight, memory again, in all the language that Blanca Nubia knows as Guayú and Spanish. One and one again, she repeats the importance to create memory, to remember what's happening here in Colombia. Some of the images that we can see in her work, like in the next slide, reminds how was her life before the violence, how was the place where she grew. The next, please. Oh, again, of these words that are power words: justice, truth, peace, memory. Thank you. Next, please. And here, all these memories about his house in La Guajira, how was the houses or rancheria, the animals, everything green and peaceful. It's like a remembrance of how was they were in that moment before the forced disappearance. Thank you. The next, please. Territory, hope. Don't forget me. The collective and the organizations in Colombia symbolize with a flower the importance of the memory in this flower. Name it, don't forget me. Thank you. The next, please. And some details of this artwork of this indigenous woman, Blanca Nubia Díaz, full of symbolism, color. The next, please. The butterfly is other recurrent motif or image in his work. She said that it's very important, the transformation, the symbolic sense of the butterfly as a symbol of survive and change and movement again and again during the life. Thank you. The next, please. And you can see all this insistence in talk with image and talk with words. And that's I think that is very powerful, this job in this space named Textile Talks, because we really talk with many language, trying to be understood, trying to communicate in all the ways possible. The next, please. And finally, I want to close my presentation talking about Gladys Acevedo, the last one in this presentation, whose son was killed by the army while he was performing his compulsory military service. He was discharged from combat and passed off as a guerrilla. This is what is known in Colombia as false positive or falsos positivos. Doña Gladys belongs to the Foundation Color and Hope. And we can go to the next, please. She has found in these works a reason to continue living. The next, please. Her work is a political gamble that invites us all to consider that the armed force victims are as victims of the conflicts as civilians. This is one of the most difficult things for victims of disappearance, understands that it doesn't matter if you are civil or if you belong to the forces, to the armed forces, you can be a victim too. And we have very important work in the way of reconciliation as a society in Colombia to understand this this condition. The victims, no matter in what part of the conflict of the conflicts you are located. Next, please. We can see how the names are changing. For example, Baltasar Bonilla. In the last one, Cristina Bautista. In the next, Joselino Granados. And the images are full of color, with a very passionate work, and all the images share a purpose. Again, keeping searching, continue searching the truth, continue saying to the state, where are they? The next, please. And I want to close with this image of Maria Jose Pizarro, which he saw this Sunday, the last Sunday, throughout Colombia during President Gustavo Petro inauguration. Her father was a murdered presidential candidate in the 80s, and she's carrying his image and his message. Make the struggle for peace does not don't cost us our lives. This humble image made by anonymous mothers came this Sunday to all television screen, and for me they constitute a triumph of the artistic language of those mothers who fight in repose for the truth. Thank you very much. And please excuse my English. And again, I hope that Textile talks better than me. Thank you very much, Lucy and Marta and Camilo, for this invitation.
Thank you, Paola. That was really interesting. I loved the contrast between the work of the artists like Olga de Amaral, who have an international presence, and then the work of the three women who you went into their work in detail. And I wanted to ask you some questions about their work. What do you find most interesting about Flor Tapia's embroideries?
Her incredible technical virtuosity, built in solitude, in a self-taught way for more than 4 decades, and that she has researched the age of 74 without having a solo exhibition, without the field on art in Colombia and the world recognizing her work, and also moved that their interest is non-recognition or the market, but having the possibility of delivering a message to humanity.
Hmm. Yes. There are so many birds in Flor Tapia's embroideries. What do you think the birds symbolize for her?
Yeah, it's true, Marta. There are so many birds. Doña Flor lives in Cartagena, near to the sea, and a very rich natural environment. She lives surrounded by birds, and in some of her works, she shows that environment in which she lives. And on the other hand, in some of her works, she shows birds that she has seen through her visions, unknown to her, that she has never seen, and that are extraordinary. There are these two types of bird experience, the birds of her visions, which are, for me, the most interesting. In the exhibition we did in December, I include a bird expert from Colombia, Mateo Hernandez, to see her work. Mateo was fascinated, and he said that can identify the most of them. They are a mystery, and art brings us forth anti-mystery.
Yeah, that's wonderful. The next question is that these embroideries, you said, are based on her visions. Do you know why there are those 3 men on the ship and what the man on the left is doing?
Oh my God. I don't have any idea. I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe I can ask Doña Flor later. But I choose this artwork because it's very interesting to me, the effect, the sensation of movement in a technique like embroidery. I saw the first time and I thought, how she can do this? I don't know, in this material. So I don't know, but I think that is amazing, and we have to study and later to see how she think about it.
I agree. I would love to know the story. I wanted to then finally ask you, do a lot of her pieces have political stories, or is the piece with Juan Manuel Santos and Barack Obama unique?
No, the production of Doña Flor does not exceed more than 30 works. As I mentioned in the presentation, she takes 3 to 5 years minimum to elaborate each piece. Within those 30 works, which are the production on her life, only one has to do with politics, and it is the vision with the President Santos and Barack Obama. So it is unique in this sense.
Now, many artists are inspired by their dreams, and I didn't know if a lot of hers were political or not. With Blanca Diaz, you mentioned the forced disappearances. Would you explain a little about the history of the forced disappearances?
Marta, thank you very much for this question. And of course, I want to talk a little bit more about forced disappearance in Colombia. It's a phenomenon that has more than 120,000 victims. It's one of the most painful victimizing events of the armed conflict in Colombia, not only because there are people who have disappeared against their will, but because their families live every day on their lives on the midst of pain and uncertainty about the whereabouts of their relatives. Victim organizations in Colombia speak of death by pain, which is what happens to many relatives who, after decades of searching, years of searching, die without having an answer. This is a painful phenomenon, as well as the resistance of those relatives who seek without rest, demanding truth, justice, and reparation, like Doña Blanca.
Thank you. No, it's horrifying. With Blanca Diaz, you said that her cultural background is in weaving, but the work that you showed were applique, crochet, embroidered. So why do you think that memory seamstresses, which is the term you used, prefer embroidery?
Thank you for regarding so carefully. I believe that for several reasons, including that, first, embroidery is something that is done in a group. It is a collective work, and it is precisely the work with the other women that has allowed them to survive and to continue seeking for their relative. Other reason could be that embroidery materials are inexpensive, easily accessible, and leftover pieces of fabric can be used. Other reason could be the embroideries are portable and can be installed and uninstalled easily. They can take them to talks, conference, to the space where they do social pedagogy of memory. I believe that there are some of the reasons. Surely there are others. And in the next textile talks, we could invite them to share their reasons.
Sure, that would be wonderful. Then the last question, well, not the last, there are two more questions having to do with the memory embroideries. They contain images of ordinary homes, farms, family members, animals. Are they memories of what life was like before the disappearance, or is there some other meaning to the animals or to the farms that are in their work?
Yes. They are usually narratives that combine scenes of different temporalities, such as mannerist painting. In this case, many embroideries show life before, life during, and sometimes also a dream life of the afterlife.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. And then I just had a quick question. One of the orange memoria pieces, there is a tree hung with little tiny bags. Do you know what they represent?
Yeah, wow. I think that is a political cry of resistance, a clear message for the state and for the world that says, here there are people who have disappeared against their will, and we are not going to leave them in oblivion. We demand to know where are they.
That's very powerful. Thank you. And then in Gladys Acevedo's work, she's using beads to create amazingly realistic portraits. She started with one she made to honor her son, but she has made many more. How does she choose, if you know, how does she choose whom she's going to honor? And were all of those pieces made by Gladys, or are they made as well by other artists?
At the works I show are by Gladys, except the last one of Maria Jose Pizarro, which I show how this type of art reach victims of all levels, not only unknown mothers, but also this public figure. Gladys shows us the motive based on the memories on the women who belong to her victims' organizations called Foundation Color and Hope. That is a beautiful name.
So I noticed that she's wearing one, and also the woman at the end is wearing it on the back of her jacket. So is that referencing a kind of garment or ornament from Colombia?
Yeah, the repetition of some geometric patterns have an ancestral symbolism, without doubt, linked to the worldview of some Colombian indigenous communities. I believe there is a lot to be written about that symbolism. I'm not an expert in ancestral cultures. I just can to be surprising. Maybe one of my purpose here today is to invite to you and the audience to write more, to research more about these pieces with all this special significance, as you say, Marta.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I noticed that some of the colors repeat, and definitely that sort of squared spiral, which it makes sense that that has to do with ancestral memories. And then finally, you said at the beginning that you feel like you have a real mission to promote the artists, these Colombian textile artists, to the wider world. And why, can you just talk about why you see that as so important?
Wow, what a question. I believe the art field tends to promote artists who have gone through the ritual on the academy. And this is a very recent invention from the 17th century, as narrated by Nicolaus Pevsner in his text, Academies of Art. But before that, the recognition given to the artist was not in the hands of an institution. It was part of a social gift, as I see, as historian, as an art historian. I would like to return something of that pre-academic moment in which, regardless of credential or degrees as a society, we can recognize the existence of marvelous artistic works. For me, it's important to promote artists like Flor Tapia, Gladys Acevedo, Blanca Díaz, because I believe it is an act of justice, an act of recognition. And also, I think many curators of my generation are not enough interested in talking about those people who are on the margins of art.
Thank you so much. This has been an amazing experience. The art is incredibly powerful, and my heart goes out to all of those mothers and artists who are mourning their losses. Thank you so much, Paola.
Thank you to Marta, Lucy, for all this great job you do. And I really enjoy this opportunity. And thank you very much. And please come to Colombia when
that would be wonderful. Thank you, Paola.
Thank you, Martha and Paula. And now I'd like to show you all another short video. We'll hear very briefly from each of the three artists, and then we'll take another look, spend a little more time with all of their artwork. So give me 1 second and we'll play that video. Sorry, one more time.
Ha sido sanador. Para nosotros esto ha sido buenísimo, haber aprendido a tejer.
Cada puntada dejamos el amor, dejamos la rabia, es como caminar esos kilómetros que de pronto le faltó a mi hijo caminar.
Yo he sido una tejedora desde niña y estoy acostumbrada a tejer tanto mochilas como bordar y todo eso.
Porque yo voy a otro mundo fuera de este.
Thank you, Paula, for bringing these amazing artists to Textile Talks. Thank you to our sponsors and donors who keep Textile Talks going. And thank you to all of you who keep coming back each week for Textile Talks. I hope you all have a wonderful Wednesday, and we'll see you again next week for Collecting Patchwork in Central Asia, a discussion with Christine Martins, presented by the International Quilt Museum. As always, you can register and find all of the info at sakwa.com/textile talks.